Right now, all across the United States, a lot of movie theaters look exactly the way they always did. The marquee is still lit, the popcorn machine is still running, but behind that familiar routine, several of America's biggest theater chains have been quietly closing screens, filing for bankruptcy, and shutting down locations that families have been going to for decades. Today, we're looking at 7 major American movie theater chains that are struggling to survive right now, and what's really driving the collapse behind the scenes. Some of these names you'll recognize instantly. Others might surprise you because on paper, some of these chains looked like they were doing everything right, adding luxury seating, full menus, premium formats, exactly the kind of upgrades that were supposed to save the industry. And that's what makes this story more interesting than a simple list of failures. Before we get into the list, here's the bigger picture. The estimated number of North American movie tickets sold in 2026 is around 555 million, at an average price of about $11.31. Back in 2019, before the pandemic, Americans bought roughly 1.23 billion tickets at an average price of just $9.16. So while ticket prices have gone up, the number of people actually walking into a theater has dropped dramatically. And maybe the most telling number of all comes from a 2025 industry report, which found that only 17% of American adults went to the movies at least once a month, down from 39% back in 2019. Streaming now accounts for roughly 48% of total film revenue in the United States. This isn't a story about people losing interest in movies. It's a story about where and how they choose to watch them. Number 7. iPic Theaters. iPic built its business around a differentiated luxury dine-in experience, positioning itself as a step above even other premium chains. In March 2026, iPic Theaters filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, warning employees they could lose their jobs if a buyer for the company's assets isn't found quickly. An industry analyst covering the filing summed up the broader pattern bluntly, noting that the post-pandemic recovery has been much slower than anyone in the industry hoped, and that most of the major chains have now either closed locations or gone out of business entirely. iPic's collapse is especially telling because it came after Alamo Drafthouse and CMX Cinemas, 2 other dine-in luxury chains, had already filed for bankruptcy of their own. 3 different companies, all betting on the same idea that a full restaurant experience inside a movie theater would be the industry's saving grace, all running into the same wall. Number 6. CMX Cinemas. CMX built its identity around the luxury end of the movie-going experience, reclining leather seats, in-theater dining, a premium price tag for a premium night out. In April 2020, CMX became the very first major American theater chain to file for bankruptcy during the pandemic. It seemed to stabilize for a few years, but in late 2025, the chain filed for bankruptcy a second time, closing several of its high-cost luxury locations. What makes CMX's story worth paying attention to is that luxury upgrades, reclining seats, full dinner menus, craft cocktails were supposed to be the industry's answer to streaming. The idea was simple. If people can watch anything at home for free, give them something they can't get on their couch. But CMX shows that a luxury experience only works if enough people are willing to pay for it regularly, and the cost of running that experience, more staff, more square footage per seat, higher rent for premium locations, made the whole model fragile the moment attendance dipped. Unlike a standard multiplex, which can survive on volume alone, a luxury dine-in theater has to fill a much smaller number of premium seats at a much higher price point just to break even. And when even a modest percentage of regular customers stop showing up, that math falls apart fast. Number 5. Studio Movie Grill. Studio Movie Grill helped pioneer the dine-in theater concept, letting you order a full meal and have it delivered to your seat while the movie played. In October 2020, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, carrying a debt load of more than $100 million. It emerged from bankruptcy in 2021 under new ownership, but with a noticeably smaller footprint than before. The dine-in model that once felt like the future of moviegoing turned out to be one of the most expensive formats to operate. Full kitchens inside a movie theater mean commercial cooking equipment, a larger staff, food costs, and health inspections, on top of everything a regular theater already has to pay for. When attendance dropped during the pandemic and never fully recovered to prior levels, Studio Movie Grill was left carrying restaurant-level costs without restaurant-level or even prior theater-level foot traffic. Industry analysts who covered the bankruptcy pointed out that dine-in chains like Studio Movie Grill were essentially running two difficult businesses under one roof, a restaurant and a movie theater, and if either side underperforms, the entire location can become unprofitable almost overnight. Number 4. Look Dine-In Cinemas. Look Cinemas built a smaller boutique chain around a similar dine-in idea, comfortable seating, an in-theater menu, and a more upscale atmosphere than a standard multiplex. In late 2024, the company's parent filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and by early 2026, Look was closing multiple locations. What's notable about Look is how recent this collapse is. This isn't a leftover pandemic story from 2020. This is happening right now, years after most of the industry claimed to have recovered, which suggests the boutique premium dine-in format is still struggling to find a sustainable audience, even in a stronger overall economy. It also raises an uncomfortable question for the rest of the industry. If a well-reviewed, well-located boutique chain can still collapse years after the pandemic officially ended, then whatever caused the movie theater industry's decline clearly wasn't just a temporary COVID-era problem that would fix itself with time. Number 3. Alamo Drafthouse. Alamo Drafthouse started in Austin, Texas back in 1997 and grew into one of the most beloved theater chains in the country, known for strict no-talking, no-texting policies, curated programming, and a dedicated fan base of more than 4 million loyalty members. In March 2021, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy due to pandemic losses, before being sold to investment firms and emerging later that year. In June 2024, Alamo was acquired by Sony Pictures, marking the first time in 75 years that a major Hollywood studio owned a movie theater chain. But the struggles didn't stop there. In June 2024, a Texas-based franchise operator running 6 Alamo locations in Texas and Minnesota shut down all of them and filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, citing what its CEO called the worst-performing quarter in movie-going history. Then, in February 2026, several more Texas locations closed, including the last remaining Alamo Drafthouse in the Houston area. Alamo didn't lose its brand loyalty. Fans still talk about the strict phone policy and curated film selections with real affection. What it lost was the ability to keep that beloved, labor-intensive experience profitable at a moment when even loyal fans aren't going to the movies as often as they used to. The franchise operator running those Texas and Minnesota locations put it bluntly in court documents, describing early 2024 as the worst-performing quarter in movie-going history, worse even than the depths of the pandemic shutdowns, which is a striking thing to say about an industry that had already survived COVID. Number 2. Regal Cinemas. Regal is the second largest theater chain in the United States, owned by the UK-based Cineworld Group. In September 2022, Cineworld filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and as part of the restructuring, the company closed 39 Regal locations across the country, including several in Southern California like Sherman Oaks, Costa Mesa, and Yorba Linda. Looking at the bankruptcy process as a whole, Regal shed somewhere between 80 and 100 U.S. locations, shrinking from more than 500 theaters down to roughly 456 locations today. The bankruptcy allowed Regal to renegotiate leases and shed underperforming locations, but it also marked one of the largest single contractions in American movie theater history from a single company. What makes Regal's situation significant is its sheer scale. This isn't a small boutique chain struggling to find its niche. This is one of the 2 biggest players in the entire industry, which shows that even massive scale and a huge existing footprint aren't enough to guarantee stability anymore. When one of the 2 largest chains in the country has to file for bankruptcy just to renegotiate its own leases, it sends a signal to landlords, investors, and the rest of the industry that the old assumptions about how many theaters a market can support may no longer hold true. Number 1. AMC Theaters. AMC is the largest movie theater chain not just in America, but in the entire world, operating more than 850 locations globally. Despite that scale, AMC has closed 213 theaters over just the past 5 years as more viewers shift towards streaming at home. In February 2026, the company's chief financial officer told investors on an earnings call that AMC will continue closing more theaters than it opens going forward, describing it as reshaping the company's footprint to improve profitability. What makes AMC's situation almost paradoxical is that 2025 was actually a record-setting year for the company in terms of admissions revenue, food and beverage revenue, and total revenue per patron. People who do go to AMC are spending more money than ever once they're there. The problem isn't how much each customer spends, it's how many customers are walking through the door in the first place. AMC's answer isn't to open more locations and hope attendance rebounds. It's to shrink down to a smaller number of theaters that can actually turn a consistent profit, betting on quality of location over sheer quantity. On the same earnings call, AMC's leadership pointed to an upcoming slate of major releases, including new installments in the Spider-Man and Avengers franchises, as reasons for optimism about the rest of 2026. But the underlying strategy remains the same, regardless of how any single blockbuster performs. Fewer theaters, each expected to perform at a higher level, rather than a large network of locations propped up by a handful of hit movies a year. One useful comparison point is Cinemark, AMC's biggest domestic rival, which has taken a noticeably more measured approach, closing a net 53 theaters between 2019 and 2023, only about a 10% reduction compared to AMC's much steeper cuts. That more cautious, incremental strategy has left Cinemark in a relatively steadier position than some of its larger and more aggressive competitors. Now here's the part that makes this story more complicated than a simple story of decline. The overall movie theater market is actually still growing. Industry analysts project the global movie theater market will reach roughly $73 billion in 2026, up from about $68 billion the year before. And there are audiences bucking the trend entirely. Reports show Gen Z moviegoers actually increasing their theater visits compared to older generations. And independent films are still pulling in major numbers when they're marketed as true events rather than routine releases. Premium large format screens, IMAX, Dolby Cinema, and 4DX among them, now account for more than 16% of domestic ticket sales, up from under 14% just 2 years earlier. And those premium tickets sell for an average of nearly $18, a 33% premium over a standard ticket. IMAX itself posted a record $1.28 billion in global box office in 2025, a 40% increase over the previous year. At CinemaCon in April 2025, the 8 largest theater chains collectively pledged $2.2 billion over the next 3 years toward modernizing their theaters, including recliner seating, premium format installations, and upgraded food and beverage options. AMC alone committed between $1 and $1.5 billion to a multi-year renovation plan. Looking back at this whole list, the pattern across the American movie theater industry looks a lot like what's happened in other industries, built around getting people to leave their house for an experience. It's not that Americans stopped loving movies. Box office revenue per patron is at an all-time high. What's disappearing is the habit of going regularly, almost by default, the way earlier generations did. The chains struggling the most are the ones that bet heavily on adding cost, luxury seating, full dining menus, premium formats, without a large enough base of frequent customers to support that added expense. Meanwhile, the biggest player in the industry, AMC, is making a very different bet: fewer locations, better locations, and treating every remaining theater as something that has to earn its place on the map. For an industry built for more than a century around filling as many seats as possible, learning to succeed with fewer seats filled more reliably might be the biggest shift of all. The theaters that survive the next few years probably won't be the ones that added the most luxury or the biggest menu. They'll be the ones that figured out exactly how many seats their local market can actually fill on a normal Tuesday night, not just opening weekend, and built a business around that reality instead of the one the industry used to take for granted. For decades, the entire business was built on the assumption that if you built enough screens, people would keep showing up out of habit. That assumption is gone. What's replaced it is a much more competitive question every single chain on this list, and everyone still standing, now has to answer for itself. Why should someone leave their couch, pay for a babysitter or a parking spot, and sit in a room full of strangers when the same movie will be sitting in their living room in a matter of weeks? The chains that can answer that question with something more than just a bigger screen are the ones that are still standing this time next year. Is there a movie theater on this list you used to go to regularly? Or one still going strong near you? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear how this looks where you live.